Welcome to the weekly vmcampos Comic Book Club. I'm your host, vmcampos. This is the podcast where I review a comic book, new or old, from my collection and rate it on the factors of the cover art, interior art, plot, and enjoyability of the book on a scale of 1 to 5. This week I'm reviewing Torchy number 4, published by Innovation in 1991. So a little bit behind-the-scenes info first. This is a reprint collection that Innovation was publishing in the late 80s, early 90s, featuring Torchy Todd, the 1950s Good Girl comic created by Bill Ward. And as you can see, the book is in black and white. It's reprinting comics from the 50s, but for a new generation in the 90s. Bill Ward was one of the paragons of good girl art back in the day. Some would say that he single-handedly created that genre and then actually refined it later on. For example, in the 60s, he had a few comics published in such books as Romp from Humorama, and you see that he really refined his artwork in creating some good art. This will be reviewed at some other point. But this 1990s reprint is just a really fun collection of these old Torchy stories from the 50s that gives you a glimpse into a bygone time in the world of culture and comics. So let's take a more detailed review of the comic. First of all, the cover art. This is not Bill Ward art. This is Brian Stelfreeze and his interpretation of Torchy Todd herself. And what's kind of cool, Innovation, their innovation was that pretty much all their covers were wraparound covers. Almost every Innovation comic has, the front and the back tied together. So here we've got the backside with the characters checking out the backside of our heroine, and she goes off to answer the phone, which actually kind of ties into a part of one of the stories. The other issues of Torchy are a bit more famous with amazing Olivia artwork. But here we've got Brian Stelfreeze, and here's a little bit of text. Pause it, read it on your own. Basically, we're talking about reprinting classic comics from the 50s. On its own, the art of this is, not to cast aspersions, but the Olivia covers are a perfect 10 out of 5. This one I'm going to say, it's a 4.5 out of 5. I do have to say, I believe the female form here is a little bit too boxy for my taste, especially on the arms over here. But, we got some nice curves going on, fun expression, and then the whole thing really is tied together with the backside of the cover. And there's even a little bit of comedy in here because, the person calling, Torchy, and then that ties into the front of the cover, I guess. So, fun overall, 4.5 out of 5. Interior art. Well, there's, I think, 3 or 4 stories within the book, and they all have the same sort of art style, and these are reprints from various 1950s stories. And there are many just inspired bits of art throughout, but some parts that are not as good as you would like. I do have to say that Torchy herself, oftentimes her facial expressions, that's the weakest part of the character, and obviously maybe we have other assets to enjoy, but I often get this uncanny valley with Torchy's expressions and her facial makeup. It's just not following the classic style of the width of the face. Usually you have one eye width between the eyes, and we're getting like 1.5. So a lot of her expressions are so weird. The male characters often, however, are rendered much better facial expression-wise, much more cartoony-wise, whereas Torchy, I don't know, there's just a little bit of uncanny valley that I see with her expressions. Posing and costuming and the like is top-notch. But just sometimes these expressions with her. So you get your bang for your buck story-wise or art-wise, interior art-wise, in terms of lots of panels to look at, lots of interesting posing and environments and such. The printing here and there looks a little bit odd. This plate seems to have been printed well, but this one is kind of overprinted. Too much black ink was used. You can kind of see the difference between these 2 pages. And we see that bit of inconsistency here and there. And I don't know if that's a result of the original art being created like that in the 50s and then faithfully reprinted in the 90s, but you can notice it here and there. Yeah, there's just a lot of fun cartoony stuff. Look at that hat just floating there from incredulousness. And then these thugs look amazing. So interior art is great. I really, really like it. It's a 5 out of 5. I like that these stories begin with a sort of a splash page and then they go off into the main plots. These expressions, some of these are just so good. There's a battle scene over here with Torchy. Here we go. Look at that. Wallop. I love that. I would love to see Torchy battling the Black Widow or Wonder Woman or the Black Cat or any of those others. And we'll see how well she holds up. So yeah, interior art is really good. 5 out of 5. With a really great focus on cartoony expressions, variety of panel layouts. But again, here's the part that feels like a Will Eisner femme fatale, but it doesn't quite land for me. This character looks amazing and well-mannered, but then Torchy just doesn't quite work. That amazing battle pose, love it a lot. Yeah, so interior art, amazing. Plot. Okay, there's a variety of plots happening. There's 3 stories here so far. There's one about being abducted by aliens, but they weren't really aliens, spoiler alert. There's one about saving Uncle's gas station. There's one about a holdup at Torchy's department store job, and then a final one about Torchy taking over for the incapacitated opera singer. They're fun plots. They're of the time. They're from the 50s, sort of simpler times, screwball comedy sort of things, cheeky humor, sexiness that skirted the censorship laws at the time, so obviously totally tame by today's standards. Nothing egregiously problematic that we might find nowadays. You know, there's no nudity, there's no racism. Torchy is a bit of a ditz. A bit of a guileless ingenue, but it all works out for her in the end. She always comes out on top. And it's all in good fun. So I'm going to say these plots are also a 5 out of 5. There's some quick little humor over here. So Torchy gets, she has to run out of the shower to get a telegram. And then she thinks to herself, I wonder who sent this. And as she's shutting the door on the telegram delivery, they say if you read them, you can find out. There's a lot of bad jokes here and there. You really should read these on your own. You can pause it and read the story completely yourself because it is just it's a glimpse into a whole other world of humor. And just some very subtle humor here and there, like this guy's pining away for his old love, Alice, who 20 years ago refused his hand in marriage. He's still pining away for Alice, who makes Aunt May look like a spring chicken. Yeah, just a lot of really cute humor here and there. Just some inspired stories that you just wouldn't see nowadays. Enjoyability of the book is also very high, 5 out of 5. So pause it, read this introductory editorial about publishing Torchy comics, reprinting those classic Bill Ward stories, who Gil Fox might have also had an uncredited hand here and there. It's very enjoyable that there are several stories in one comic. It's also cool to see what are the back issues that this particular company is publishing. Many of these are completely lost to the dustbin of time, relegated to the dollar bins. But at the time, there were a lot of comics being licensed by Innovation, like the Child's Play comic, the various Anne Rice, Vampire Lestat comics. There's a Quantum Leap comic coming soon. July 1991. Remember Quantum Leap? We have these other licensed comics. They did Lost in Space, Nightmares on Elm Street, Child's Play, Quantum Leap, etc. in full color. As I was kind of looking up some of these comics that are long forgotten, a lot of them kind of seemed interesting, such as Neon City. Pause it, read about that. But here's one that really stood out to me. Innovation at this time was publishing Desert Storm, Send Hussein to Hell, #1. Which was basically reprinting their various Innovation comics, but then also adding the very timely Desert Storm conflict to a comic book form. I wish that the book would tell you the year of publication of the original Torchy comics. You have to look it up yourself over at comics.org. But this is a later stage Torchy comic, and you can see much more refinement in the art. Again, we've got kind of the uncanny valley happening here and there, but just much better grasp of the cartooniness when you're a few years into drawing your character. And again, add 10 more years of cartooning experience, and then you get to these pinnacles of art. So very enjoyable, issue 4. One more thing here. So this is the rising early popularity of Japanese animation in the 90s. Studio Proteus. So I'd like to know more of the history here, because I know that they were involved with Dark Horse in the 90s, eventually publishing Ghost in the Shell and other Masamune Shirow work. But here we've got Studio Proteus teamed up with Innovation to publish 3x3 Eyes, which I swear I'm still going to read one of these days. And then the back cover again ties in with the front cover, so a very enjoyable comic overall. And that was this week's review, Torchy number 4, published in 1991 by Innovation. A wonderful collection of Golden Age Good Girl comics, republished for the new generation of the 90s comic book fan. Tell me what you think. Did you like the various stories here? The line work? The bad jokes and the good girls? Are you an old-timer that remembers Torchy back in her glory in the 40s, 50s, and 60s? Are you a newcomer that wants to know more about the adventures of Ms. Todd? Do you have suggestions for me to review other like-minded good girl art of the day? Tell me in the comments. Are you not a fan of black and white art? Well, you should be, or else Torchy will knock you out just like that spaceman. I'd like to hear your thoughts. Tell me in the comments. So once again, this has been the weekly VM Campos Comic Book Club, and I'll see you next week.